Sebastian O'Kelly joins me, Chief Executive of the Leaseholders Charity, the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership. And Sebastian, knowledge is king in this, isn't it?
It is indeed. And I'm afraid people were very much misled by PLC house builders. And shamefully, they weren't alerted by the solicitors or the valuers who are recommended by these PLC house builders. I mean, one lesson must be never employ a solicitor recommended by a person trying to sell you property.
Always get an independent.
Absolutely.
So what have you been seeing and hearing?
Well, it's been a disaster, this, and for the last 3 years we've been urging government and the sector to put this right. We know that about 10,000 leaseholders have got doubling ground rents, and about 100,000 in total have got properties blighted by very aggressive ground rents. And these were constructed to make money out of ordinary families' homes. It's an investment vehicle for other people in ordinary families' homes, and it's caused the ruin that George Lustig was talking about. Absolutely delighted that he's taking enforcement action against these companies, and it's going to cost them an awful lot of money.
And when you say ruin, describe what that means.
Well, it means that the people think that it's nice to think that all sales of property, houses or flats, are because you're moving up. You're moving up the property ladder, but most sales are actually driven by divorce, death, and debt. And if you have any of these 3 Ds,
I didn't know that,
in your family, then you're in a pretty desperate position, and you really do need to sell. Yeah.
When we hear that the CMA is continuing its investigations and will take action, I mean, that's clearly a serious shot across the bows of the developers who are implicated in this. Do you want to see recompense for people?
Yes. Taylor Wimpey put aside £130 million to deal with this, and I don't think it's spent anything like that in changing the doubling ground rents, highly aggressive contracts that they sold to ground rents which rise with retail price inflation. And I think that similar sums need to be put forward by the PLC house builders named by the Competition and Markets Authority. I think this will cost between 500 million and £1 billion.
Because you think people should be out and out compensated for what's happened to them?
I do, and I think that they were. There's a mis-selling element here. They were sold highly aggressive contracts which weren't. None of the professionals involved said a word against them, and the people have bought properties which they cannot sell. Even this idea of varying the ground rents from doubling to RPI is highly controversial. It's still an extremely lucrative investment asset in somebody's home to have £250 a year ground rent paying out linked to RPI for the next 250 years or 999 years, whatever the lease length is. That's a very attractive investment asset which people can borrow or investors can borrow against to acquire ever larger portfolios.
You see some examples of people who've been affected here. I read of one story where a young woman bought what she regarded as her forever home in Cheshire 6 years ago. She was told she could buy the freehold for between £2,000 and £4,000 2 years later, only for it subsequently to be sold on to an investment company, which then quoted her, when she was ready to buy it, quoted her more than £13,000, even though it was built into the original sale promise and commitment.
Well, we've heard literally hundreds of cases similar to this. The only surprise is that it's £13,000 as opposed to around about £25,000 to £30,000 for the freehold. So that's the only remarkable feature of that example.
Do you know what we heard there from the previous guest, George Lustig, that it began at the beginning of this century? Do we know what prompted it? Did somebody just spot it and think, great, and then it was copied? Is that essentially how it happened?
Well, you've got a commercial property market in this country which is highly capitalistic, if you like, and international. But this century, UK residential property has been one of the best performing assets in the world, and world investors have been very eager to get in it. get on board this bandwagon. And sure, it's complicated to actually own a house or own a flat, although plenty of people have bought investment flats in the major cities of the UK. But the perfect vehicle to do this is to buy the freehold of leasehold properties. In that way, you have a very good income-paying asset, which is highly tradable. And unfortunately, what has been discovered in the course of this scandal is that most of the freeholds are bought by private equity speculators based offshore. So you'll never know the ultimate beneficial owner of the freehold to your home.
Thank you, Sebastian, for talking to us. Sebastian O'Kelly, Chief Executive of the Leaseholders Charity, which is called the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership. I can see many of you calling in already on this. I know from a few conversations with friends and colleagues over the years that who've been caught up in this, that it is like having snakes around your ankles, basically, when it comes to trying to move on in life or to live a life without, the fear of this increasing financial burden. So how has it affected you if you've been caught up in this? 0345 6060 973, the number to call. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. It's 2:15.
LBC